Democrats fight against an amendment that would fine them for breaking quorum for the purpose of impeding the action of the legislature, and Republican State Representative Charlie Guerin undermines the GOP by thwarting every effort to prevent Democrat committee chairs. It's time for some Straight Talk Texas. I'm Bunker Bob Steinhagen, and this is the Bunker Bob Show. Greetings, thrill seekers, music lovers, conversationalists from across the fruited plains of the great state of Texas. I am your host, Bunker Bob Steinhagen, bringing you an hour of unfiltered, unadulterated, and unapologetic conservatism to help make Texas and America great again. And I'm grateful to have you watching today on the Bunker Cam via Rumble, YouTube, or Facebook. And welcome my podcast listeners who are out there walking, driving in their cars, wherever they're listening on via Spreaker, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Podchaser, or Podcast Addict. It is great to have you here. And as I am on the air, I am an 11th Amendment is going on in the House of Representatives, State House of Representatives here in Texas, dealing with the rules. And there have been some interesting rules that have demonstrated to everyone who the Democrats really are. If you've ever doubted that Democrats, when they can't win, they cheat, today should put every one of those apprehensive ideas to rest, because there was an amendment to the rules today by Representative Hunter, who basically is the author of the rules. I believe he is the chair of the Rules Committee. But this is a great one, and it is a great amendment because it basically undermines the Democrats who have already projected with many in the press that they fully intend to basically break quorum again, as they did in the last legislative session, where they all got on a plane and they hightailed it out of Texas, so that they could prevent legislation that they didn't like. It is the epitome of crybabies, because Democrats are not mature. I'm sorry, but if you're a Democrat, you're immature. Yes, I'm saying that you're immature. Have you taken time to even think about the fact that there are two genders? And you want to say there are hundreds? You've got to be kidding me. The lack of integrity Democrats demonstrate is beyond measure, especially those elected officials. Now, listen, I am, as you know, the first to say that Republicans are not perfect in any way, shape, manner, or form. I'm here to talk about one of them, or a couple of them, Charlie Guerin and Dade Phelan, both of whom are an embarrassment to the state of Texas. They are an embarrassment to the state of Texas, Republicans at least. And what's interesting here is Hunter introduces a piece of legislation that I think it deserves our attention. And the amendment did get passed, was passed, and I'm going to highlight this on the Bunker Cam. So if you are watching, you can see the bill itself and what I'm talking about. Basically, this is, and I'm going to start with line 12 on this amendment, which is an amendment to HR 4, the rules. And it reads as follows: if a member is absent without leave for the purpose of impeding the action of the House, the member, now understand, I don't know that you can be more clear. The Democrats have, in the last legislative session, when they left Texas, they made it clear. They got on TV. They said, we are not coming back. We are intentionally impeding the action of the legislature. We want to make it very clear. That's what we're doing. We do not want them to be able to pass legislation that protects the Second Amendment. They do not want legislation passed that is going to identify that there are only two genders. They don't want that. They don't want a lot of legislation that we pass. They do not want the heartbeat bill passed. They do not want that. And so if they can't do it through the means of debate, of argumentation, as representatives of the state of Texas, if they can't do it through the legislatively by the rules, well, then they're going to cheat. They're going to pack up and go home. Well, Hunter proposes this amendment, which, as I said, if they leave for the purpose of impeding the action of the House, and here's what's interesting. I'm late coming on to the show because I've been watching debate all morning since 10 a.m. this morning, and I'll talk about the committee assignments and committee chair issues as well. But I have been watching the debate go on, and especially the debate about this bill that had Democrat after Democrat. But there's also something unique about those Democrats, because every one of them that stood up, every one of the Democrats that stood up in opposition to ask questions and to challenge the germaneness, to challenge the veracity of this bill, happened to be black. So when I say that they are poised to make this a racist, to pull out the race card on this issue, I have standing on that. And you can bet your bottom dollar that tonight, when you watch your local news here in Texas, what you will find is they are going to pull out the race card. Why? Because they have no standing. They have no true argument to make other than the race card, other than it's racist. That's it. So what happens if you try to leave for the purpose of impeding the actions of the House? The member will be subject to one or more of the following: fines as provided in this section, payment of cost incurred by the sergeant at arms, reprimand, censure, or expulsion. That has just opened up a firestorm of vitriol and anger, and by these members of the state house. One after another talks about, well, how can you do this? How can this be even possible? Because they're challenging it based upon the fact that it's unenforceable. If there's no quorum, the House can't enforce it. Well, actually, the House can. It can be enforced, and it's enforced. It's enforced when they come back. And one person said, well, there's no due process in this. And the answer is yes, there is. There is due process. You have the right to appeal. There's due process in all of this. But what's funny about all of this is they have already said we're going to do it. We're going to leave the state of Texas for the purpose of stopping the action of the legislature. So they've already established they're going to do this. And now they want to take issue and try to make it seem as though there's something else going on here. One of the last, I think it was the last member to ask questions about this amendment from Mr. Hunter, she basically said, okay, I'm just going to admit, she literally says, I'm just going to admit that, yeah, if I walk out, all right, and I'm doing it for this purpose, I don't have, what about us who are poor? Here's the clue, folks. They're going to call discrimination here, and they're going to use the race card. Right now they're saying, well, it's what if I'm poor, if I can't afford it? Because you cannot, here's the thing, unless the House excuses the payment by majority vote, each member who is absent without leave is liable to the House for a fine in the amount of $500 for each calendar day of absence, and the member's pro rata share of the cost incurred on line 10, incurred by the Sergeant at Arms to secure the attendance of absentees. And then it goes on to the Committee on House Administration shall notify a member of the total amount of fines and costs for which a payment is not, for which there is no, they are not excused. A member must pay the amount stated in the committee notice by making payments that, and it goes on, and it goes into more of the details of that. So that's the crux of it. And of course, you have members who are just up in arms over this idea that you would dare challenge. That you would not allow them to basically thwart, to cheat the taxpayers of Texas from their legislature. One member basically stood up and said, well, the people of my district, if they don't want me to allow something to move forward, and I leave for that purpose, well, then you're basically saying I can't serve the people who elected me. I mean, the insane arguments. It's not insane. It's stupid. It's a level of stupidity that is staggering. If the people elected me so that I could go to the legislature and basically walk out, that's what she's saying. That's what she was saying. That they want me to walk out. They want me to try and prevent laws from moving forward. Now, how exactly does a legislature work? When do Republicans do that? I'm sure they could. But the problem is, if you can't win fairly, well, then you have to cheat. You have to cheat. Isn't it interesting? Joe Biden, we are now learning that Joe Biden had classified documents in his possession after being vice president of the United States. Now, there's a couple of points that all of the left want to highlight. Well, it's different than Trump. Yeah, it is different than Trump, but not for the reasons they want you to believe. The fact is, as a president can declassify information, documents. And the documents that Trump had were declassified. And Merrick Garland spent time creating this illusion. And the other point to make is that the documents in question with Donald Trump were secured by the Secret Service. They were protected by the Secret Service. Not so with the classified documents that were in the possession for at least 2 years 4 years by Joe Biden, who moved them from one location to another until they went to the University of Pennsylvania. That is not, by the way, a secure location when you have students who can go and they can look into documents. But thirdly, classified information should never be in the possession of a vice president. They do not have that kind of authority. A president does. But no one wants to talk about that. Why? Because when this was discovered, it was just days before the midterm election. When you can't win, you cheat. So, what did Joe Biden do? He demanded and required that this not be leaked to the press until yesterday. Now, since I'm on YouTube, I can't even talk about the election. No, we can. Actually, I can. I can talk about the election that was stolen by Donald Trump from Hillary Clinton. If I say that, that's okay. That's permissible, even though it has been refuted, not just proven and again and again. Donald Trump and Russia colluded to win the election, but you can say it. YouTube has no problem with people saying this lie. But say something about another election, ask questions like challenge, or bring some evidence to light that might, I don't know, bring in question an election that YouTube has said, no, you can't talk about that. Why? Because when Democrats can't win, they cheat. They just outright cheat. And that's what's happening here in the state of Texas. Texas Democrats have learned from their national leaders how to cheat the system, cheat the people. So we're going to cheat by walking away. Well, wait a minute, I can't afford it. Oh, it's discriminatory. Get ready, folks. Get ready. This band of members of the House and their woke counterparts, even though that none of the everyone who asked questions of Representative Hunter on this issue, every one of them happened to be black. And you can tell, and one lady even said, she even started to intimate that it was more devious than just discriminating against those who are poor. She stopped herself and she said, well, no, I'm not going to tell you what I'm thinking right now. Because she knows that, wait a minute, there are reporters standing out the door and we're about to have a press conference. By the way, folks, I'm in Rockwall, Texas. I'm not in Austin, Texas. I'm not. I am watching. I'm watching on the feed by the state of Texas that gives me the floor, the House floor, and allows me to listen into the debate. And that's it. That's all the information I have. But mark my words, folks, this is going to come out as racist. Because they have no other standing. They have nothing else to argue. So, folks, this is going to be interesting. They cannot use their campaign funds to pay the fines, which is $500 a day. I don't know if I mentioned that or if that was. Yes, a fine in the amount of $500 for each calendar day of absence and the member's pro rata share of the cost incurred. Yeah, so that money, so to pay that, the member of the House has to take it out of their own pocket. I think it's hilarious that a member of the House of Representatives would say, what about us who can't afford it? What do you mean you can't afford it? It really defies logic when you think about it. Think about if we go through the logic of this issue, the answer is really simple. Well, it's real simple. You don't have to break the quorum. You don't have to walk away to try to impede the action of the House. It's real simple. It costs you nothing. And Hunter rightly said and highlighted the fact that She said, I can't afford an attorney to try and defend me in this case. And Hunter's point was, there are many rules where you are fined if you violate a House rule. You're fined $500, $1,000. You're fined a lot of money, a lot more than what's being proposed here. And I don't hear you speaking out against those issues. Those issues aren't discriminatory. No. They're not discriminatory. Just the one that basically calls their bluff and says, okay, you want to leave the state of Texas to impede the legislative session, fine. You're going to end up paying. You can be censured. One lady, one member of the House who was asking questions said, so if I'm expelled, well, how long am I expelled for? And the answer is, that depends on the House. The House of Representatives will make that decision. The majority will make the decision. She said, so I can be expelled for how many days? He said, you can be expelled, period, out of the House of Representatives for violating the Constitution. The Constitution establishes that you are elected and that you shall serve and that you shall not escape. Literally, the governor has the right to, and I don't know if it's the governor or the attorney general or sergeant at arms. I think it's sergeant of arms of the House has the legal right to arrest any member of the House of Representatives who is supposed to be in session that is not, and bring them back to the House of Representatives. They have the legal right to do so. And every member of the House of Representatives, when they hold their hand up and take their oath, is pledging to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Texas. That's their oath. Democrats don't care about their oaths. As we know, Democrats, the more I listen to Democrats, the more I realize just how out of touch they really are with reality. And I have lost so much respect. I have very few. I have a couple of Democrat friends. I do. Who I respect and who I like very much, and we have a good time going back and forth on issues. And they happen to be political players, and we have a good time together. They happen to be people who don't play this nonsense game of running away. They can acknowledge the hypocrisy that they're seeing in their own party. Is it any wonder why we're seeing more and more Democrats starting to scratch their head and say, I think I'm in the wrong party? Of course, you have people like Tony Gonzalez, Congressman Tony Gonzalez, who I think is in the wrong party. He should be in the Democrat Party the way he is talking, the way he has behaved since he's been elected, and before. He's an embarrassment. But I digress. Well, so what's going on with committee chairs? Well, committee chairs are, as we've talked about time and again, it is a legislative priority of the Republican Party of Texas. The delegates at the June convention, as part of the platform, identified 8 out of 16 finalists, if you will, platform planks that the party, that delegates had wanted to highlight, and we made 8 of them legislative priorities. And interestingly enough, Number 5 is to ban Democrat chairs to ensure that all legislative Republican priorities are given a fair opportunity to become law. The Republican-controlled Texas legislature shall adopt a rule that would end the practice of awarding committee chairmanships to Democrats. Now, that seems pretty straightforward, but Dade Phelan thinks that Texas Republicans are stupid. They are uninformed. They are ignorant. They don't know what they're talking about, because he is advocating against this idea that Democrats shouldn't be chairs of committee, even though those committee chairs have the greatest amount of power over what pieces of legislation is allowed to come before their committee. A committee chair has the power to basically prevent any piece of legislation they don't like from getting to their committee, from being considered, from being discussed. I keep looking up to see they're on Amendment 16 right now, the rules. They're still on H.R. 4. So as I continue, during last sessions, one of the most high-profile examples was the Save Girls Sports Act, which requires youth athletics to compete within their own biological sex. The bill instantly died in the Public Education Committee, chaired by State Representative Harold Dutton, a Democrat from Houston. The first question I would ask is, why on earth would a Republican Speaker of the House ever appoint Democrats as committee chairs? It makes no sense. Their argument is, look at Washington. It's broken. Look at what happens when no Republicans are allowed to be committee chairs of any congressional committee. My question is, when has the majority party ever given a committee chairmanship to the opposing party? Has Washington always been broken? Maybe so. It's a good argument to make. Yes, maybe so. But is that the reason? I don't think so. When you have been given the right, given the power to govern, why are you giving the power away to the party that is in opposition to you? It makes no sense. The reason why you don't allow committee chairs from the opposing party is obvious, but not to Dade Phelan, and not to the sycophants, not to Dade Phelan's sycophants like Charlie Guerin. Charlie Guerin is a state representative from Fort Worth. His tongue is so far up the ass of Dade Phelan, I can't even begin to express how far up it is, because he is the lapdog for Dade Phelan. Dade Phelan says jump. Charlie Guerin says, yes, sir. How high? How high? What do you want me to do, O mighty one? Now, I remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that the committee, that Dade Phelan won the speakership yesterday by a vote of 143 to 3. 143 to 3. Folks, I want you to think about this. 143. Think about what we just saw in the United States House of Representatives. How many Democrats voted for Kevin McCarthy? The answer is 0. How many Democrats voted for Dade Phelan? Answer is all of them. Why? Why would they? Why would they do that? Well, as we talked about time and again, I'm going to keep bringing this up because this is important. And if we don't know what our history, if we don't know our history, we are doomed, I should say, to repeat it. Basically, what Dade Phelan did is he went around to the Democrats. He said, if I get your vote, I'll make sure you have committee chairs. So he did. And they did. They said, you've got our support. And then he went to a few like Charlie Guerin and said, listen, if you support me for speaker, I'll make sure you get a choice committee chairmanship. I'll announce what Charlie Guerin's committee is, by the way. Charlie Guerin is a sellout he's a sellout to the Democrats, as is Dade Phelan. Dade Phelan is a sellout, is a Republican in name only when it comes to governing. So basically, he goes around and he goes to different. He only needs 20 or 30 members of the House Republicans to make a majority, along with the whole block of Democrats and the smattering of sycophants. And by the way, Brian Slayton is making another amendment. I've been following it all day. I've got a few to talk about, but basically, so then they caucus. They go into caucus. Republicans go into caucus. This is before legislative session began. And Dade Phelan, what does he do? He said, by the way, I've already won the speakership. You can either support me and you're going to be treated well, or you can oppose me. And Brian Slayton and Tony Tinderholt of Arlington, Tinderholt was running, and Brian Slayton was promoting Tinderholt. Why? Because they wanted someone who was going to adhere to the GOP's base. The delegates who said we do not want Democrats to chair committees. But Dade Phelan, it was a fait accompli. He had already won the speakership, and when Congressman Phelan was on my show last Friday, he tried to do a little game playing by saying, well, you got to remember, because I brought it up. He said, you got to remember that the Republicans, they met already. He already had the votes that he needed. Well, of course, Pat Phelan knows as well as anyone, he was a member of the state house, that Dade Phelan had in his back pocket the full support of Democrats. Don't believe me? Just look at the vote yourself. That's the game they play. And it's disgraceful. It's despicable. So, Brian Slayton and Tony Tinderholt. Slayton is doing most of these, and right now I should have looked up to see. I'm sure Charlie Guerin, every time Brian Slayton tries to bring an amendment to the floor, Charlie Slayton interrupts him with a point of order in the middle of what he's trying to state, his amendment that he is trying to state. He doesn't even get a chance to finish. And Charlie Guerin jumps in and says, Mr. Speaker, point of order. This is not germane. It's out of order. And then they spend the next 10 minutes getting all of their ducks in a row legally, so that then the Dade Phelan comes up and makes sure that he said, yeah, it's not germane, it's out of order. What's out of order? All right, so I'm going to read for you a couple of Slayton's, a couple of his amendments. If at the time the Speaker announces the membership of committees, the members of one political party constitute a majority of membership of the House, the Speaker shall designate a member of that party to serve as chair of each committee. This is, by the way, my friends, directly from the House, the delegates of the GOP. Guerin called it out of order, and Phelan then ruled it out of order after 10 minutes of discussion. Slayton and Tinderholt. Let me see. So Tinderholt, I'll bring up his. It was interesting. I thought it was funny. Tinderholt brought up an amendment that said that, and this all has to do with the chairs of campaign. The chair of each committee shall submit to the speaker an affidavit stating that the chair believes that there are only two genders. Tinderholt basically said, "This is unbelievable that I even would bring something like this up. But if you're going to have committee chairs, at least make them say that there's only two genders." Charlie Geren called it out of order. Dade Phelan said, "Yeah," ruled it out of order. Then Slayton proposed a statement regarding Marxism. By the way, he never got to finish this, but I'm going to read it because if you watch the House and if you watch the news, of course, you'll never see any of this. But the chair of each committee shall submit a statement on official state letterhead to the speaker as to whether the chair supports Marxism or not. The speaker shall ensure that each statement received under this section is published in the House Journal. It was deemed ungermane. Charlie Geren called it out of order, and Dade Phelan ruled it out of order. The speech code prohibited. Here is another one by Brian Slayton. The chair of a committee may not enforce a speech code that restricts the use of biologically correct pronouns. The chair of a committee may not enforce a speech code that restricts the use of biologically correct pronouns. In other words, may not enforce speech code that restricts the use of biologically correct. In other words, they cannot say they, them, their. They cannot do all of these others. They're simply, if a chairman may not say to someone, like for instance, what he's basically saying is, if I say that mankind, use the word mankind, that would be out of order in this if this rule were not passed. Because a chairman could basically say you may not use him or her. A chairman may do that now in the state of Texas. Charlie Geren said, objected to it, calling it out of order, saying it would be a violation of free speech. Wait a minute. This is why Charlie Geren is a stooge. This is why Charlie Geren is a joke. This is why Dade Phelan, who acted who basically called it out of order for nonsense reasons. Basically, it's not restricting free speech. It's protecting free speech. If I want to call someone a man or a woman, I should be able to do this. Slayton was presenting common sense amendments to the rules by saying, hey, chairs, you cannot require someone to refer to someone by a nonsense gender, or you cannot demand that they not use the word mankind or him or her. Can't do that. You have to allow them to say express however they wish to express. That was out of order. Now here's another one. So this is a requirement applicable to certain committee chairs. If at the time the speaker announces the membership of a committee, the members of one political party constitute a majority of the membership of the House, the speaker shall designate a member of the party to serve as chair of the following committees: appropriations, calendars, elections, homeland security, judiciary and civil jurisprudence, land and resource management, public education, public health, redistricting, state affairs, ways and means, business and industry, higher education, the Committee on Pensions, Investments, and Financial Services, and the Committee on Resolutions Calendars. So Slayton recognized, okay, we've lost this fight to prevent Democrat committee chairs. You got Charlie Geren and his cohorts basically defending Phelan because they've got their tongue far up the ass of Dade Phelan. They got to do whatever Dade Phelan tells them to do. And so, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, they jump. They don't serve the citizens of Texas. They serve Dade Phelan. Those of you who have Charlie Geren as your state representative, folks, let me tell you, he doesn't give a hoot about you. He only cares about what Dade Phelan thinks, because Dade Phelan is going to give him the plum committee assignments. And he's going to do whatever Dade Phelan says. So Brian Slayton is presenting this and saying, okay, basically, since we've lost this fight, at least these committees shall be chaired by the majority party. What do you think happened? Charlie Geren Brian Slayton wasn't even able to get the first sentence out before Charlie Geren stood up and said, out of order, out of order, out of order. I call it out of order. Dade Phelan ruled it out of order. By the way, so they're still on Amendment 18. It was another Slayton amendment. They wait. It takes them 10 minutes to go through all the procedures and things so that Dade Phelan basically calls it out of order. Yep, there is a point of order on Slayton's amendment. They've got that up, and so they have not ruled on it yet. But that's what happens, folks. These are your state representatives, and have you called them to find out what is going on? Why are you supporting a speaker who is going to appoint committee chairs? And if they tell you, well, it's always been done that way, that's not true. And for that matter, it shouldn't matter. If you're going to appoint committee chairs, if you're going to give Democrats committee chairs, why on earth would you allow Democrats to chair public education? Why? How woke do you want our education to be? If you care not for education, then by all means, put a Democrat in charge of it. Now, I talked about Tony Gonzalez, who is a United States congressman, who is a true. When I say Rhino, Tony Gonzalez will, at this point, he is the poster child for Republicans in name only. Tony Gonzalez appeared on 2 separate political talk shows Sunday in which he repeated his intent to oppose a rules package that establishes the guidelines governing the legislative chamber. Speaking to Fox and Friends, Gonzalez claimed that the proposal would cut defense spending, not true, by the way, and added that's an absolute lie. It's an absolute lie. See, that's the thing. That's how you know he's a Democrat. Although Republicans lie too. What am I talking about? All right, you got me on that. Republicans lie too. That doesn't prove he's a Democrat. It just proves he's a politician, right? Cut defense spending and added that he was opposed to restoring the motion to vacate the chair, a historic rule often attributed to President Thomas Jefferson that allows any single member to challenge the speaker and had been in place since 1801 until former Speaker Nancy Pelosi removed it in 2019. But he wants to oppose it. When the border security framework, when the Texas Republican delegation wrote the border security framework, every one of the Republican Texas delegation members, every one of them signed it with one exception. That's Rhino Tony Gonzalez. Gonzalez declined to attack other Republicans during the Fox interview, telling the host, "You know I don't like to attack my colleagues." When asked if he shared the view that Representative Matt Gaetz was a total fraud. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about that. However, during an interview with CBS Face the Nation, with the left-wing press, Gonzalez took aim at the 20 Republican holdouts. These are the 20 that basically got us these rule changes that are monumental. I mean, they are monumental. One of the rule changes, by the way, deals with the fact that the fact that we have so many members of the House and Senate who have received obscene profits made as part of the legal insider trading common among lawmakers. And they wanted to stop that and require that all members of Congress put their assets, put their investments in a blind trust. So that's one of the rules that they demanded, by the way. That was one of the things that I didn't mention before. But that's just one of the many rules that would never have happened had this Gang of 20, had the Liberty PAC. I know they're the Freedom Caucus, but the Liberty Caucus, they really are talking about more than freedom. It's about liberty, to ensure that the citizens of this great nation are protected, that our rights are protected, and that our members of Congress can't go around the same laws that we have to abide by. He said that he characterizes the group as the Insurgency Caucus, not the Freedom Caucus, not Liberty Caucus, Insurgency Caucus, which was followed with the tweet depicting Gonzalez during his military service in the Middle East, writing, quote, "I have fought insurgents my entire adult life." Well, that sounds very eerily familiar, doesn't it, folks? Yeah, there was another Texas congressman who called the Freedom Caucus members terrorist. That a Republican. Isn't that interesting? And Gonzalez, but he doesn't attack his colleagues. No. These are insurgents. But he's not attacking them. I'm sure it's just a figure of speech, right? Gonzalez has expanded his attacks in the CBS interview, accusing the 20 Republicans of planning to push an, quote, anti-immigrant legislation under the guise of border security policy. Quote, "If this insurgency caucus decides to put anti-immigrant legislation on the floor and masquerade it as border security policy, that's not going to fly," Gonzalez said. I ask you, why is Tony Gonzalez a Republican? Why does he call himself a Republican? That makes no sense to me. Why not just be honest? Because you'd have a better chance of winning in your district, by the way, which is a Democrat district. And as a publication of this article that I'm reading, Gonzalez's office did not respond for specificity on the anti-immigrant legislation to which he refers. He won't respond. And by the way, this I'm getting from the Texan. This report. Yeah, he won't because it's not anti-immigrant, and it's wholly American. This is what happens, folks, when people who are basically wolves in sheep's clothing, they come into the Republican Party and we ingratiate ourselves. We surround them and we go, "Oh, you're a Republican. You're one of us now." And we fall all over ourselves and try to just, since they're a Republican, we just ignore a lot of the things that they say and a lot of the things that they do. Most importantly, how are they acting? What actions are they taking? I don't judge Gonzalez on who he says he is. I judge him on what he does. He did not sign the border security framework that the Texas Republican delegation put together. Part of the rules reform agreement includes prioritizing passage of the Texas Border Security Plan, legislation developed and released last month by every Republican congressional member from Texas, with the exception of Gonzalez. This article by Matt Stringer reads. Representative Chip Roy blasted claims that the reforms he and the other 19 Republicans negotiated with Speaker McCarthy could cut defense spending, writing, "That's a lie," and explained the deal would only cut non-defense discretionary spending, and pointed out that federal bureaucracy spending has as far outpaced the federal defense spending in recent years. In fact, there was broad agreement spending cuts should focus on non-defense discretionary spending, Roy wrote in a statement, adding, "This means cutting funding for the woke and weaponized bureaucrats that receive massive increases under the $1.7 trillion omnibus bill." And Dade Phelan is ruling on, by the way, Slayton's latest point of order, and it's obviously being ruled out of order. He just slammed the gavel, which means that was out of order. Yep, it was out of order. Of course. Big surprise. If Brian Slayton, by the way, if Brian Slayton proposes anything, Dade Phelan will call it out of order. Because Brian Slayton dared to challenge His Majesty Dade Phelan. And Charlie Guerin is there as his henchman. The little Charlie Guerin, little Charlie. That's what he's going to be on this show from now on. Charlie Guerin is a Republican in name only, is a disgrace. And that's what's happening in the House when it comes to. So we've got other. What about my favorite Rhino? And by the way, Slayton's doing another amendment. I can't wait to read these amendments. I have not gotten a copy, a heads up copy. And by the way, amendments are presented literally. They do not come online until it is recognized by the speaker. And so, okay, now we have another person obviously making a point of order before Slayton. That wasn't Charlie Guerin. I don't know which Republican it was that made a point of order on that one. But we can't miss. I can't miss a report by the Texas Scorecard. By Darrell Frost from the 6th of this January 6th, where John Cornyn, a true Republican in name only, a guy who voted for the $1 trillion omnibus bill, a guy who voted against the Second Amendment, who got booed, who literally got booed and jeered at June's GOP Republican convention here in Texas. He is so disliked. And a resolution demanding the resignation of U.S. Senator John Cornyn was passed this week by the Executive Committee of the Northeast Texas County Republican Party. The Lamar County Republican Party Executive Committee's resolution demands Cornyn resign based on his lack of fidelity to our founding principles, our national and state constitutions, and the Republican Party of Texas. In a Friday morning interview with radio show host and Newsmax TV personality Chris Salcedo, Lamar County Republican Party Chairman Scott Hummel discussed the resolution and his frustration with the senior U.S. Senator for Texas. Quote, "We decided to do this because he's literally not following the Republican Party of Texas platform based on his voting record," Hummel explained. "And when he voted for the omnibus bill, that was what put me over the edge to go ahead and make this resolution. We need to fire him. Amen." Salcedo agreed, calling Cornyn an enemy of Texas for supporting the $1.7 trillion bill, which allocated nearly $45 billion in aid to Ukraine and millions to secure the border of several Middle Eastern countries while prohibiting the construction of a wall on our own nation's southern border. That's the act of a traitor, in my opinion, Hummel concurred. Hummel described how their county's sheriff's department recently arrested a drug smuggler with fentanyl, which has been pouring over the southern border and ravaging communities throughout the country. So the border is everywhere, Hummel asserted, and John Cornyn does not want to protect the Texas border, and that is a big problem. Salcedo affirmed this perspective, arguing that John Cornyn isn't loyal to Texas. He's loyal to Mitch McConnell. And Mitch McConnell is loyal to China, and that's a big problem for me. The resolution mentions several other grievances with Cornyn, including his assent to the confirmation of a dozen or more Biden appointees, his opposition to resolutions proposed by U.S. Senator Rand Paul to restrict government spending, his lead role in negotiating wide-ranging gun control legislation last year, and his support for funding to promote critical race theory. Hummel said Cornyn's record goes completely 100% against the legislative priorities we came up with at the convention. It goes against our platform we have here in Texas as a Republican Party, and we just can't stand for any more. People have to realize that we can't just say, oh, well, he voted for it. What are we going to do about it? Well, let's stand up and demand that he resign and get on board with this. More and more people are waking up to what's really going on in our country, and we can no longer stand by and let our elected officials who are supposed to work for us get away with not following their platform. If you sign on, hey, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative Republican, and you voted against us, that's not right. Salcedo accused the Republican Party of being schizophrenic and rudderless with no values. He argued that a third of Republicans are really ideological Democrats, a third are staunch conservatives, and a third refuse to call out Republicans who don't acknowledge or support the party's stated principles. When Hummel mentioned how Ted Cruz is recognized in the resolution for standing up for Texas, Salcedo launched into a withering criticism of Cornyn and offered solid praise for the state's junior citizen. John Cornyn is a menace. John Cornyn has shown his loyalty to Mitch McConnell and his disloyalty to our people. John Cornyn thinks he's unassailable, he's unaccountable because, hey, he's got 4 more years and, hey, we can't recall him. Maybe John Cornyn can move to Kentucky and be with his best friend Mitch McConnell, who is palling around with Beijing Biden. That's where he belongs. I couldn't agree more. And folks, that's the thing. The reason he's willing to do it now, the reason John Cornyn is just basically showing his true colors is because he has no concern about being boosted out of office for 4 years from now. And that's a long way away. And voters, they do not have a good memory, a long-term memory. I guarantee you in 2.5 years from now, when Cornyn starts to run for re-election, guess what's going to happen? He's going to be the most conservative member of the United States Senate. He's going to propose legislation that is as conservative as Donald Trump, and he's going to try and hope that we all forget about who he really is and what he's done to the people of Texas. That's the way politicians work, and John Cornyn is a career politician for sure. I think there are county parties to get involved in this resolution, if for no other reason but to draw attention and keep the focus on what's really happening and who John Cornyn really is. Because in 4 years from now, folks, I'm telling you, people are going to forget. Well, I hope that, and the purpose of this show is to ensure that you don't forget. I hope this has been a great show for you, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. You have a blessed day. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.